There is a particular kind of poverty that gold cannot cure. The poverty of a man who believes that tomorrow will always wait for him. In the grand pavilion of the Oasis Bazaar, surrounded by 3,000 ingots of hammered silver, Bodhi Song held a sealed parchment, yellowed by 15 harsh winters. His thumb traced the brittle circle of dried red wax. He had never dared to break that seal. Outside the arched silk curtains, 40 laden camels knelt in the amber dust of sunset, their heavy cedar crates packed with rare saffron, polished white jade, and ceremonial raw silk. Men whispered his name with awe across the trade routes from Chang'an to Samarkand. They called him the master of the Golden Trail, the man whose word was stronger than imperial iron. Yet sitting alone before his brass scales, Bodhi could not quiet the tremor in his right hand. Beneath the velvet cushion of his counting desk rested a polished camphorwood box. Inside lay not jewels, but 17 unread envelopes, each addressed in the shaky, uneven brushwork of a mountain village scribe. Each letter bore the same sender, Bodhi Song, the blind mother he had left behind in the mist of the high northern pines 20 years ago. Every time a caravan messenger had delivered one of those envelopes over the decades, Bodhi had tucked it into his robes, promising himself the same comfortable lie. Just one more season, he would whisper into the desert wind, clenching his fists until his knuckles turned chalk white. Just 5,000 more ounces of silver. When my name is carved in jade, and my wealth can build her a palace of cedar and stone, then I will ride home and place it all at her feet. But wealth on the Silk Road was a river that never reached an ocean. The more a man drank, the more his throat caught fire. Now, as the call to evening prayer echoed over the clay ramparts of the frontier outpost, his senior factor, Tariq al-Mansour, stepped into the lamplight. Tariq adjusted the dark silk patch covering his blind right eye and dropped a fresh parchment roll upon the ledger. "The northern passes are freezing early this autumn, Master Song," Tariq said, his voice as dry as mountain shale. "If we depart tonight, we seize the entire spring monopoly on River Jade. If we delay by even 3 weeks, rival merchants from the south will starve our trade." Bodhi looked down at the unread letter in his palm. The paper felt paper-thin, fragile as a dried locust wing. For the first time in 20 years, a cold draft seemed to slip through the heavy silk hangings, chilling the marrow of his bones. "Prepare the heavy iron wagons," Bodhi said quietly, his thumb pressing one last time against the unbroken wax before locking the letter into the camphorwood box. "We turn the caravan north at dawn. We go home." In the early days before the gold and the silk, home had been a small earthen cottage, perched beneath the jagged gray cliffs of the northern pines. Bodhi remembered the sound of the loom in the dead of winter. His mother, Bodhi Song, had lost her sight to river fever before his 7th year. Yet her slender, calloused fingers could navigate the warp and weft of coarse hemp in total darkness. She had known the shape of his face by touch alone, her thumbs smoothing the curve of his cheek whenever he wept from the hunger that constantly stalked their valley. During the bitter famine of his 12th year, the mountain frost had cracked their clay hearth. Bodhi had watched her shivering through the long nights in a threadbare tunic, wrapping her only woolen shawl around his shoulders while pretending she was warm. A boy who grows up in freezing mud must build a fortress of iron, Bodhi had sworn to himself as he lay listening to her hollow cough in the dark. "I will not let this world crush us. I will bring back enough gold to purchase summer itself." When he reached 25, he signed his name to the Merchant Guild's ledger and strapped on his first pair of leather traveling boots. He stood at the rotting bamboo gate of their mountain plot, holding his mother's weathered hands. "3 harvests, Mother," he had promised, his young voice ringing with fierce ambition. "Only 3 harvests. Keep the fire burning. When I return, you will never wear coarse hemp again. You will walk in robes of spun gold." Meili had smiled, her unseeing milky eyes turned toward the sound of his breath. She had reached out, her trembling palm resting gently over his heart. right above the small silver scar, where an apprentice chisel had cut him years before. "A house needs only love to keep out the cold, my son," she had whispered softly. "Do not stay away until the winter freezes the road." A mother's heart does not count ounces of silver. It counts the sound of your footsteps on the stone. He had turned away with a confident laugh, eager to conquer the horizon, unaware that ambition is a road that stretches forever, while human life is only a passing cloud. The Silk Road was a furnace that burned away youth and forged men into stone. Within 5 years, Bodhi had mastered the treacherous mountain gorges and the shifting dunes of the Taklamakan. He survived sandstorms that choked entire camel trains, navigated bandit territory with cold steel, and learned to weigh raw jade against the beating of a rival's pulse. Every victory brought more silver, and every chest of silver demanded another caravan to protect it. "The market waits for no man's sentiment, Bodhi," Tariq al-Mansur would remind him over cups of hot spiced tea in the roadside caravanserais. "In this trade, if you pause to look back over your shoulder, your competitors will strip the flesh from your bones." And so, whenever the mountain messengers brought an envelope sealed with dried paste from the northern village, Bodhi would place it inside his cedar chest. Year 5 brought a letter. Bodhi was securing the imperial tea concession in Chang'an. He told himself he would read it after the contract was stamped. Year 8 brought 3 letters. Bodhi was rebuilding his fleet of wagons after a desert flood. He promised he would open them the moment his losses were recouped. Year 12 brought a thick envelope delivered by a wandering monk. Bodhi was opening his 4th warehouse in the great market city of Dunhuang. He looked at the wax, felt a sudden sharp pang in his chest, and locked it away behind 3 brass padlocks. "Next spring," he whispered to the empty room, "when the new trade route is settled, I will take 50 horses, loaded with silk, and return as a prince." But the seasons turned like the grinding wheels of a millstone. The hair at his temples turned to silver. His skin hardened into leather under the relentless sun. He built stone manors in 3 different cities, yet he slept every night in canvas tents, guarding his ledgers with a bare dagger beneath his pillow. He had become a master of 10,000 miles of road, yet he was an exile from his own life. The breaking point came during his 45th year. A sudden financial panic swept the Western kingdoms, collapsing the price of silk and driving dozens of merchant houses into bankruptcy. Bodhi worked without sleep for 3 months, outmaneuvering rivals, buying up distressed cargo, and doubling his fortune in a single brilliant trade. On the night the final ledger was balanced, his clerks cheered in the counting hall, bowing before the great master of commerce. Bodhi stood alone on the open balcony, looking out over the glittering desert city. The wind blew from the north, carrying the sharp, unmistakable scent of mountain pine and freezing snow. He reached into his tunic and pulled out his ring of iron keys. He walked slowly to his iron-banded vault, opened the camphorwood box, and counted the envelopes. 17. 17 unread voices spanning 2 decades of silence. A cold terror, sharper than any bandit's blade, gripped his heart. The gold in his vaults suddenly felt as heavy and cold as graveyard stones. "Tariq!" Bodhi shouted into the courtyard, his voice cracking like a dry branch. "Sound the bells. Hitch the draft horses to the wagons. We leave for the northern pass tonight." The caravan moved north, like a golden dragon wound across the frozen mountain trails. 20 heavy wagons loaded with ingots of silver, bolts of patterned velvet, chests of rare medicinal herbs, and sacks of unpolished jade ground their iron wheels against the granite road. Bodhi rode at the head of the column, driving his stallion without mercy through sleet and freezing fog. His heart pounded against his ribs with every league. He had rehearsed the scene 10,000 times in his mind. He would pull up to the village gate. His servants would unload the warm silk quilts and the jars of honeyed wine, and he would kneel before his mother, placing her frail hands upon mountains of gold. He would tell her that her sacrifices were over. He would prove that he had won. On the 10th day, as the gray morning mist cleared over the mountain valley, the caravan crested the final ridge of the northern pines. The village looked strangely smaller than he remembered. The terraced fields were half-fallowed, and the roaring river of his childhood had shrunk to a quiet, icy ribbon. Bodhi dismounted before the old lane and walked on foot, his heavy embroidered silk robes dragging through the freezing mud. His leather riding boots crunched against dead autumn leaves. He rounded the stone bend and stopped dead in his tracks. The bamboo gate had rotted away, its broken slats lying half-buried under creeping wild blackberry thorns. The small earthen cottage was silent. The thatched roof had collapsed inward over the eastern beam, and green moss covered the cold stone threshold where his mother used to sit spinning hemp. "Mother?" Bodhi whispered, his voice lost in the freezing wind. There was no answer, only the dry rustle of pine needles falling upon the collapsed roof. He staggered through the ruined doorway. The earthen hearth where they had once huddled against the frost was filled with ancient ash and dead leaves. No, Bodhi dropped to his knees in the damp dirt, his embroidered silk sleeves soaking in the mud. "No, no, no. I brought the gold. Mother, I brought the gold." A soft rustle sounded from behind the ruined wall. An elderly Buddhist monk in a patched gray robe stepped into the doorway, holding a wooden walking staff. His left hand was missing the tip of its index finger, and his weathered face carried the deep, unhurried peace of the mountain peaks. "The road has been long, Bodhi Song," the monk said softly, his voice carrying the warmth of a hearth fire. Bodhi scrambled to his feet, grasping the monk's rough wool sleeve with frantic hands. "Where is she? Where did they move her?" "I am Bodhi Song. I have 20 wagons of silver on the road. I can buy this entire mountain. Tell me where she is." The monk looked into Bodhi's bloodshot eyes with profound sorrow and no judgment. "I am Master Gautam, abbot of the Mountain Mist Sanctuary," the monk said quietly. "Your mother, Miley, passed into the Pure Land during the third blizzard of 3 winters ago. The world seemed to stop spinning. The wind died in the pines. Bodhi collapsed against the earthen wall, his chest heaving as if he had been struck by a boulder. 3 years, she waited 20 years, and I missed her by 3 years. She did not spend those years in anger, Bodhi," Master Gautam said, stepping closer and placing a steady, warm hand upon the merchant's trembling shoulder. "Come with me. She left her inheritance for you." Bodhi followed the old abbot up the stone stairs to the mountain sanctuary in a daze. The heavy bags of gold on his wagons sat abandoned on the road below, unguarded and forgotten. In a quiet, candlelit chamber of the temple, Master Gautam placed a simple, unvarnished cedar chest upon a low wooden table. The wood was worn smooth at the corners, polished only by the touch of aged hands. When her eyes could no longer see the morning light, Master Gautam said softly, "She would sit by our temple gate every winter, listening to the caravan bells on the distant highway. Every time a traveler passed, she would ask if the master of the Golden Trail had come home." Bodhi sat frozen, his breath catching in his throat. "She knew you were busy building your kingdom," the master continued gently. "She never blamed you. But she knew the northern winters better than any merchant. Open it, Bodhi." With shaking fingers, Bodhi lifted the simple iron latch of the cedar box. There were no gold coins inside. There were no deeds to mountain land or strings of polished jade. Inside the box lay 15 pairs of hand-knitted coarse hemp socks. Each pair was crafted from scrap yarn and rough mountain hemp, woven with uneven, trembling stitches that showed the worsening arthritis and failing strength of a blind woman's hands over 15 long years. Tucked into the cuff of each pair was a small slip of paper, written in the clumsy brushwork of the village scribe. Bodhi lifted the first pair, knitted 15 years ago. The paper read, "Winter is cold on the mountain pass. Keep your feet warm, my son. He lifted the 5th pair. Do not work through the night. Rest when the snow falls. He lifted the 10th pair, the stitching loose and frayed. I heard your name praised by a merchant from the south. I am proud of you. Do not forget to eat warm soup. And at the very bottom lay the 15th pair, knitted from thin, fragile gray thread, the stitches knotting where her failing fingers could no longer pull the yarn tight. The note was barely 3 words. Come home soon. A sound tore from Bodhi's throat, a raw, agonizing wail that shattered 20 years of armored pride, 20 years of greed, and 20 years of delusion. He buried his face into the rough, coarse hemp of the socks, breathing in the faint, lingering scent of dried lavender and mother's love that no mountain storm had been able to wash away. He wept for the youth he had squandered chasing phantom titles. He wept for the letters he had left unopened in his dark vault, while she sat in the freezing wind, knitting warmth for feet that were walking away from her. He knelt on the cold stone floor of the temple until the candles burned down to their tallow pools, the tears washing away the hardened shell of the man he had pretended to be. When the morning sun broke over the mountain mist, painting the pine needles in liquid gold, Master Gautam entered the courtyard. Bodhi Song sat upon the stone steps. His rich indigo silk robes with their fur collar lay folded neatly upon the timber bench. His embroidered leather riding boots were gone. On his bare feet, Bodhi wore the 15th pair of coarse gray hemp socks. They were rough against his skin, imperfect and frayed at the heels. But as the mountain breeze swept across the flagstones, his feet were filled with an ancient, unbreakable warmth. He looked up at the abbot, his eyes clear and swollen, but empty of the feverish hunger that had consumed him for half a lifetime. Master Gautam, Bodhi said, his voice quiet as mountain water, send word to the caravan below. Let the wagons be opened. Distribute the grain, the silk, and the silver to every family who froze while I was counting coins. Build a hospice for the elderly, and bridge the river so no child is trapped on the other side. The abbot smiled, bowing his head in silent reverence. And what will you do, Bodhi Song? Bodhi looked down at his rough hemp socks, then out across the endless sea of pine forests waking to the dawn. I will stay here, he said softly. I will sweep the temple steps. I will learn how to weave hemp for the travelers who have lost their way, and I will finally read her letters. That afternoon, beneath the sheltering boughs of an ancient cedar tree, Bodhi sat beside his mother's grassy resting mound. One by one, he opened the 17 yellowed envelopes, reading each word out loud into the fragrant mountain air, letting her voice fill the valley at last. The Silk Road would tell many legends of the great merchant who vanished into the mountains, leaving behind mountains of gold. But up in the quiet mist of the high sanctuary, there was only a man in a coarse gray robe, carrying a wooden broom and a heart that was finally at rest. The richest hands are not those that hold gold, but those that learn to let go.